Welcome to Coffee with Democrats, a sensible platform for progressive conversations. Coffee with Democrats is a grassroots movement dedicated to hearing from Democrats, candidates, legislators, and friends from all political backgrounds who want great conversations. Coffee with Democrats is committed to increase Democrat voter registration and Democrat voter turnout by making voting more exciting and meaningful. And now here's your host of Coffee with Democrats, Kevin Dawson.
All right, welcome this evening with Coffee with Democrats. This is going to be a little bit different conversation than what we normally do. We like to do these in the morning, but this is going to be an evening session of Coffee with Democrats, and we are honored and privileged to have with us Andy Fugate, representative from House District 94. I was going to go 96. For some reason, I had that all mixed up in my mind, but we are so happy to have you on with us this evening. You've got your coffee cup in the background there, and I failed to bring mine in with me, but let's talk a little bit. Just what's your favorite morning drink, evening drink? What is your favorite coffee or coffee substitute?
Well, let me start with when I'm on Zoom or when I do my Sunday night live stream, and you can find that on Facebook on my public page, Fugate for HD94. But I normally have a glass of orange juice in the evening, and so that's what I've got tonight is a glass of orange juice. In the morning, when I am at the Capitol, I'm busy drinking the Capitol coffee.
Oh,
they like it a little extra strong, a little chunky. When I am here in the district, I can be found over at Jitters Coffee, which is on Main Street in Del City, locally owned, and I enjoy a nice cup of their light or their medium roast.
And if you don't know their address, give us an idea of what crossroads is Jitter Coffee at.
If you are coming off the interstate, coming off of I-40 at Sooner Road, and you go south 2 blocks, you'll run into a stoplight. Jitters will be on your right.
Okay, excellent. So I like to be able to send people to our favorite coffee shops. My favorite coffee shop right here in Norman is Beanstalk Coffee and Snow. That's at the corner of 36th and Tecumseh in Norman. So it's in a little shopping center just to the south of that intersection on the west side. So if you are in the Norman area and you are looking for a great cup of coffee, snow cone, or any other flavored drink, they are a great place to go, and they are Democrat friendly. We really support them, and we want everybody else who are Democrats to support them as well. So let's get talking a little bit about, we just started our session. And as always, the session starts with the State of the State address by our governor. So with that in mind, I wanted to ask you if you had a few comments to make about the State of the State address that we received from Governor Stitt.
Well, gosh, we could spend 3 or 4 hours just talking about that alone. Let me start with a couple of fundamental things. One, it's ridiculous to see the governor continue to fight with our tribal partners right here in Oklahoma. Some of the very best things happening in this state right now are happening as a result of tribal involvement. And it is unfortunate that we have a governor that doesn't know how to look at people as equals and as partners.
Right.
He continues this mindset of subjugation, which frankly is 150 years out of date, and it's disgusting.
Right.
The governor tried to talk a little bit about some of the top tens, to claim some top tens here in the state. The only meaningful top 10 that I'm aware of that he actually achieved in the 6 years now that he's been in office is in our U.S. highway roads and bridges, and we went from 11th to 10th.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to point back and say that whole process started in 2003 when Democrats were still in control, and we put together the Roads Trust. I will give my Republican colleagues some credit as well because they increased the amount of funding that went into that. But it has been a 20-year journey to go from 49th in the nation to 10th in the nation. And to my knowledge, that's the only top 10 claim he can make. And at the same time, we have moved in the wrong direction in so many different places. People talk about education all the time, but the reality is we're now number 1 in domestic violence in the United States. We are number 3 for spouses being abused in domestic situations. We are top 10 in teen suicide. We are top 10 in drug overdoses here in the state of Oklahoma. And this is all on Kevin Stitt's watch.
Right.
We slipped 3 places in our poverty rankings and are now ranked bottom 8 in poverty. 1 in 5 Oklahoma kids, that's 20% of all families, wakes up in poverty every day. And if you're a family of 4, the poverty line is only $26,000.
Right.
And 1 in 5 kids is living that way.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is sad. That's a sad commentary about his agenda. And he continues to push this agenda to decrease taxes for the wealthy. That's on his agenda this time. There is some discussion about, and I know that the Democrats are pushing for reducing the taxes on groceries, or maybe even eliminating the grocery tax. And that would help with the poverty level. And again, I think that the Democrats are pushing that. It might be getting a little bit more bipartisan, but what are your thoughts on whether that could actually be pushed through?
Well, let's start with a basic fact. Oklahomans received the same size tax cut the governor is pitching this year just 2 years ago.
Okay.
And when I talk to crowds, I routinely ask for a show of hands. How many of you realize you got the same size tax cut 2 years ago? Nobody noticed because it didn't matter to them. The majority of Oklahoma families received $34 or less a year in that tax cut. That amounts to 9.3 cents a day.
Right.
And the governor tries to position this as some kind of a pay hike, a pay raise for people. So here's a talking point for you. If you want to get $1 an hour pay raise under the Kevin Stitt tax cut pay raise plan, do you know how much money you'd have to make in a year? $832,000.
Oh my Lord.
You have to be a millionaire
to
get $1 an hour pay raise under the Kevin Stitt tax cut. Yeah. In the meantime,
Andy.
Yeah. Hey, Scott.
How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I hope you are too.
I am, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to take you back for just a moment. Kevin, forgive me for interrupting here.
Oh, please don't apologize. Jump in.
But I want to go back to the infrastructure piece of state of the state. There was no mention of the fact that our Republicans in Washington voted against every possible good thing for Oklahomans. And that is not on Kevin Stitt's watch. I mean, it happened during his governorship, but that was thanks to the Biden administration.
Right.
He had literally nothing to do with that.
You're 100% correct, Scott. You know, we had almost $2 billion worth of investment right here in Oklahoma in rebuilding hospitals, rebuilding airports, rebuilding dams, water treatment facilities. The list is lengthy, and it's all ARPA money, and it's all Uncle Joe that we can thank for that.
Absolutely.
Not a
That's
Republican or not an Oklahoman in Congress who voted in favor of that. And yet my colleagues are just perfectly fine with taking all the credit for that money being spent.
Oh, sure, they show up at all the ribbon cuttings and all the press ops, but it is so disturbing to me that these people who vote continuously against the interest of Oklahomans show up for the credit.
Yep. You know, they had speaking of you know, spending on needs, they had an article today in the Oklahoman that identified over $25 billion in deferred maintenance right here, you know, whether it's in our parks or it's in our colleges and universities, it's in our agency buildings. You know, the GOP plan seems to be, we're going to sell off all of our crown jewels to the highest bidders so that these people can go make money off of what, you know, ought to be bringing in tourism dollars, because there is no vision for fixing any of that or even taking care of it. The tax cut the governor proposed is worth $250 million. It would take 100 years of that tax cut to pay off the deferred maintenance that is identified in today's Oklahoman article. There are other proposals. Kevin, you mentioned, you know, I think the grocery tax and the possibility of that. And I'm grateful that a number of my colleagues in the legislature are leaning that way. It's worth noting that Kevin Stitt had 3 opportunities with special sessions called on tax cuts, and he never once mentioned the grocery tax cut that he campaigned on.
Right.
For a typical family in the state of Oklahoma, you're spending nearly $300 a week on groceries. That grocery sales tax cut for that family would range from about $650 to about $800 a year versus the dime a day that you would get under the Kevin Stitt plan.
And that's real money in the pockets of Oklahomans.
Yep.
And that alone gives Oklahomans more spending power to continue to grow the economy. And worst of all, I think, is that he is claiming this as his own device, when in fact it was Emily Virgin who first brought this to the forefront.
Yep. Now, if we want to take this a step further, if we're really interested in trying to put money into the hands of people who are desperate, the one thing the grocery tax does not do is help the poorest of our families, because those are the folks who are using supplemental nutrition dollars to purchase their groceries, and those dollars are already untaxed. So what I think the state ought to be doing is something we talked about 3 years ago, and that's a tax rebate. So, you know, number of kids in your family times $100. Plus mom and dad get $200 a piece. So a family of 4, you know, you're talking about $600 that are going to you, whether or not you purchase groceries. The state very clearly has some excess dollars now. I don't think we should be looking at doing this every year, because the reality is it was just 4 years ago in 2020 when we had a huge revenue shortfall.
Right.
We had $1.3 billion in projected revenue shortfall. Under Kevin Stitt, which he seems to have forgotten already, he thinks it's been rosy the entire time. We all remember the pandemic happening. And so we have to be very cognizant of those situations and make sure that we don't do something tax-wise that leaves us painted in a corner.
Right.
So a tax rebate on a per capita basis is one way to handle that on a one-time. And if we still have additional dollars next year, we could do that. And we could spend some of our additional dollars investing in our future. We could focus on mental health and substance abuse, which is what people told us to do when we passed State Question 780 and 781 in 2016. It's been 8 years now, almost 8 years, and we've put a paltry $12.5 million into mental health and substance abuse. That's it. You can
And
go out.
as Kevin and you both have pointed out, Oklahoma has an enormous drug overdose problem.
Yes.
And we could do so much if we properly funded mental health and substance abuse services.
Yep.
And we're just not doing it in a way that's meaningful, that's helping people move into recovery and then into good employment.
Absolutely.
And I look around the country and I see what other states are doing. And Andy, this is where I give you so many props, because I don't have to go to work every day at the legislature beating my head against a wall trying to make people understand what's good for all Oklahomans. And that's one of the things I admire so much about you and your Democratic colleagues. You're not fighting for something just in your district. You're fighting for the very lives of Oklahomans, no matter where they live. And our governor simply will not do that, has not done that. Neither has our superintendent of public instruction. And so I so appreciate and admire all the work that you and your colleagues are doing to try to make a real impact on the lives of all of us in Oklahoma.
Well, thank you, Scott. I'll just say that there are far more regular, normal, working class Oklahomans than there are in the donor class. And there are a number of us, frankly, on both sides of the aisle. I'll give props to some of my Republican colleagues as well, who firmly believe that we work for the people of Oklahoma and not the donors that go donate to Kevin Stitt's campaign.
So we're starting a new session. We talked about the tax cut that Kevin Stitt was pushing during the State of the State and some of the subsequent bills that have been introduced. What other bills that you know of that are, I say you know of, what other bills that have come up that you either are championing or you're looking at with really a lot of shame that, you know, you've got your fellow colleagues that are pushing this stuff. So what are the ones that concern you the most and which ones encourage you the most?
Well, if I may, I'd like to start with 4 bills that I have under my name. And I'll start with one that we just activated today in the form of a shell bill where we got substantive language. It would change the way we handle the initiative petition process in the state of Oklahoma. So today you have 90 days to collect signatures, and at the end of the process, you turn in those signatures and they start validating and saying, did they get enough or did they not have enough, right? Sometimes, even though you collected 50% more than you think you need, you find out that 50% of those were names like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and those goofy things, right? So the change I have proposed would allow the petitioners to submit signatures throughout the entire signature gathering period and allow the Secretary of State to immediately begin validating signatures. And so when you get to the end of the 90 days, you turn in your last bundle. A couple of days later, they validate those, and immediately you know whether or not you've got enough or you don't.
So with that in mind, where for those people that are watching Coffee with Democrats this evening, where would a person go to follow some of the legislations that's being introduced?
So the simplest approach, obviously, is to watch your local media,
Sure.
whether it's print journalism, online journalism, or television journalism. I think everybody knows where the television journalism is.
Yeah.
Focus on the national, focus on the state.
State. Yes.
But I recommend people look at Oklahoma Watch, the Frontier. There's a new Oklahoma Voice, which is terrific. Non-doc. I did a segment a couple weeks ago on my own Sunday live stream just talking about various sources where you can go watch and learn more. You can obviously go to the state website. It's oklegislature.gov.
Okay.
And there's a tab there for legislation, and you can see the various things that are going. You can list by subject, you can list by author. If you happen to know a specific bill number, you can look it up by bill number.
Right.
For most people, they're not quite sure what the bill is, so the subject search is a really good place to start. We happen to be in the second session of the 59th legislature.
Right.
And all of the work we did in the first session last year that didn't make it to the finish line still sits out there as carryover language. And so we've got almost 5,000 bills that we're kind of wading through. So, so if I could backtrack real quick and talk about 3 other bills real quick.
Yes, please do. Yes.
I have a children's protection package, a trio of bills that the first among them, and probably the most important, is an elimination of the pedophilia by marriage loophole that exists today.
Yes, exactly.
In Oklahoma statute. And I hear my colleagues all the time talking about groomers and pedophiles, and they're all wrapped around the axle. The reality is that if a 16-year-old girl gets pregnant by a 25-year-old guy, that their parents, instead of reporting them as a pedophile, as statutory rapist,
Right.
can coerce their child into marrying that 25-year-old.
Right.
That's wrong. It's despicable. And it's pedophilia.
Yes.
It is an adult having sex with a minor. I do have a provision in the bill that says if you have a 16-year-old that believes they want to marry that 25-year-old, they can be certified in the eyes of the law as an adult through a process called emancipation. And at that point, they can make an adult decision on their own.
Right.
If you have to get your parents' permission to get married to somebody, that's not an adult decision.
Right.
That's a kid decision.
Oh.
And you, as a kid, should not be having sex with an adult.
Right. Or the other way around, being a target of an adult who is
being preyed upon. Yep.
Yes.
That's exactly right. The second,
Andy, I'm so glad you brought this up, because invariably Republicans go straight to pedophilia.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they're supporting it every single day that they don't act on this.
That's exactly right. Put your money where your mouth is. If you're really, really concerned about this stuff, instead of just targeting people, which is effectively what they do today, to shut them down, well, if you're really worried about it, then work with me to change the law.
Right.
Yes, sir.
The second provision I have affects minor age children that have babies. And we know with the Dobbs decision in Oklahoma having the most punitive, restrictive laws in the nation as it relates to abortion, the reality is that children are getting pregnant and they're having babies. Well, the way the law exists in Oklahoma right now, for you to get help supporting your baby, there are a number of restrictions. You have to live with with a parent, for instance. You know what? I hate to say this to folks, but sometimes that parent is the one that got that girl pregnant.
Yeah.
And it's just absolutely horrifying to think that the state says you can't live on your own with your baby. You have to live with your abuser. And so this eliminates all of those restrictions. It says if the state is going to require you to have a baby when you're a minor, then the state is responsible for helping you pay the bills. It seems
Awesome.
pretty straightforward. And then the third piece I have addresses the reality perception, however you want to think of it, for my Republican colleagues who believe that life begins immediately as soon as a sperm fertilizes an ova, right? A moment of conception. Well, this says that as soon as a woman realizes she is pregnant, she is now eligible for a special open enrollment period to pick up health insurance.
Excellent.
We lead the
That's
nation.
perfect.
We're one. We don't lead. We're one in the top 10 for maternal mortality and infant mortality in Oklahoma. Number of reasons why, not the least of which is we have so many medical deserts and OBGYN deserts across the state. But part of that is that we have so many women who still don't have access to health insurance. And telling a woman, hey, you're pregnant, sorry, you have to pay all your bills, you can't get insurance until your child is born is just, it's stupid. So I want to address that issue. So that's the trio of children's protection package that I've got.
And those are outstanding. Please go ahead, Scott.
Thank you. Andy, what kind of support are you getting from the other side of the aisle on these bills? Because these are life-saving measures.
Well, I'm a little challenged right now, struggling to get hearings in committee. We're just finished with week 2. Monday is the first of the committee deadlines where appropriations related bills need to come out of committee. And I've not been notified yet that I'm going to have the bill talking about the eliminating the restrictions on minors having children and getting support. You know, there's a fiscal piece of that. There's a cost associated with it, which means it has to go through an appropriations subcommittee. So I've got my fingers crossed that they will hear it. And you know, the same challenge I'm having with the other 2 bills, the insurance committee doesn't really want to hear my insurance related bill, and the the marriage, underage marriage, pedophilia by marriage bill is assigned to the judicial civil committee. And so I'm working with that committee chair to try to get a hearing on that. So if people are out there interested in that, by all means, if you will contact your own state legislator and say, hey, we need to be protecting children in the state of Oklahoma. Fugate has these bills. Tell your legislator that you want those bills to be heard.
I just need to underscore what you just said, Andy, because people listen to their constituents. And I want to remind all of our listeners that every single time that you call or email your legislator, that is logged. And so there is a record of Oklahomans saying, I want this, I don't want this. And the quickest way to be intimately involved in legislation is to reach out to your legislator.
I'm going to piggyback on that and just, I've been asked a couple of times recently about advocacy, and I want to give the audience a little bit of advice. So don't just pick up the phone or send an email when you're angry about something your legislator is doing. Pay attention to what we do and send us a thank you when you see us do something right. And even those folks I'm diametrically opposed to politically in the legislature, I still find opportunities to work together to say, you know what, we see eye to eye on these particular issues. When you do that, you build a relationship that is far different with your legislator. And they'll see on their phone, oh, that's Andy calling. He's called me 3 times to say, attaboy on this. I wonder what he wants. And that then allows me to have a conversation that says, you know what, Representative, respectfully, this is the reason why you need to think differently about that particular bill. And will it change their mind? Not necessarily, but it certainly gives you the opportunity to have a far different conversation.
And
I
I'm
promise
glad
you,
you said that. I'm
yeah,
really glad you said that, because it's about those personal conversations, Andy.
yep. And I promise you, we legislators can't know everything about everything. And so there are 40,000 people in my district, and I know there are people who are experts in so many of the things that we do in the legislature. And if I have a political difference from you with you, and I shut you down, then shame on me,
Yeah.
because the people deserve for me to make an informed choice. And that means listening to everybody.
And that is such an important thing. I talk with legislators all over the state of Oklahoma, and that is one of the recurring themes that I hear all the time. And in as much as we get so aggravated as Democrats with our Republican colleagues that are in the legislature, and we get really upset with some of the things that they do. When you have that conversation with your Republicans, I live in Rosecrans district, so I'm blessed. But I live next to Mark McBride's district, so I end up calling up there, and I never talk to him, but I get to talk with the aide or the secretary in the office. The
Legislative
office,
assistant.
yeah, and they are just so kind, and they're willing to listen to us and pass on the information. And one of the things, and like you said, the I got into this really being very abrasive, but I called up Mr. McBride when I seen that he was challenging the 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 Secretary of Education or Superintendent of Education. Some of the things that he was doing, and then that office opened up a little bit better for me after that. So it's one of those things that the compliment. It may only be one or two compliments, but that compliment goes a long way, and especially when you're talking with people that are maybe on the other have that R designation behind them, because most time whenever we call up to talk with our legislator, or I have that conversation with Rosecrans Jacob, it's always so congenial. We always, because we see eye to eye on so many things. And John Waldron and we had a conversation here not too long ago, and it was about the same thing. And I hear it over and over again. Please call your legislature and thank them for the good work that they're doing. So I'm glad you said that, and I want to just piggyback on what you just said. So and I appreciate that. Um, so those are the three topics that you talked about with your legislation. Are there any other pieces of legislation that are coming out that you just shake your head at and say, "Oh my goodness"?
Yeah, the sad reality is this is an election year,
Yeah,
and we've made national headlines multiple times already for some just horrible, horrible legislation. Saying because somebody is Hispanic that they are a terrorist is
yes,
just appalling.
right.
And it makes me scratch my head and say to myself, how could anybody who has a Hispanic bone in their body support the GOP in the state of Oklahoma? Because that's what they think of you.
Yeah, they're targets to our legislature right now,
Yeah.
to the Republican legislature. I gotta clarify that, because not everybody's lumped into the same thing, but there are a key group of extremists within the Republican Party that push that.
We had a bill yesterday in committee that is effectively going to eliminate the almost all forms of contraception for women, because there's a colleague of ours who is concerned that um, going back to fertilized egg, if that fertilized egg doesn't get a chance to implant, then oh my gosh, we've murdered a baby.
Yeah,
And I got news for them. An OBGYN will tell you that 48% of fertilized ova do not implant
yes,
in the first week. They are expelled from the body. So I guess God is aborting 50% of all of what you consider to be a baby.
right.
We had legislation, again, taking away local control. We have a bill that would prohibit municipalities from using ranked choice voting. I
Yeah.
looked at the elections on Tuesday in Midwest City. We had one city council ward there with 6 people in the race, and nobody got more than 30% of the vote. Wouldn't it have been nice to just have a ranked choice voting scenario? And my Republican colleagues, well, we can't have that. Guys, you used ranked choice voting to select the Speaker of the House.
Yes, exactly.
You had 11 people who wanted to be Speaker. They held an election. They took the bottom vote getter out of it. They had another election. They took the bottom vote getter out, another election. That's ranked choice voting.
Right.
Worked for them, but they don't want you to be able to do that. There's an election-related bill that changes how we do the initiative petition in Oklahoma to require 5% or 8%, depending on the kind of petition you're running, of the signatures to be gathered in each county in the state of Oklahoma. So the smallest county in Oklahoma, voter registration wise, Harmon County has 1,300 registered voters. That means 1,300 registered voters could hold the rest of the state hostage.
Right. Right.
That's just ludicrous.
Right.
That's not democracy. The initiative petition is about putting democracy, direct democracy, in the hands of the people. And
Right.
because we have an initiative petition in Oklahoma, we have things like an ethics commission. We have term limits. We have a start and an end date to when the legislature can meet, because the people wanted us to be part-time legislators. Governor wants us to be there full-time with all of our special sessions, but the people want us to be part-time.
Right.
None of those things would have happened if you were waiting on the legislature. Can you imagine the legislature saying to itself, gosh, what we really need is an ethics commission to be investigating us?
Right.
It took the people to do that through the initiative petition. And my colleague wants 1,300 people in Harmon County to hold 4 million Oklahomans hostage because he's afraid they might do something he doesn't like. Even if they got an initiative petition through the signature validation process, it still requires a majority vote of the people to make that change.
That goes hand in hand with what I've been putting out on my social media, that Democrats want to do the will of the people. Republicans want to control the will of the people.
Do you know why that is?
I'm listening.
So it stems from the way we handle elections in the state of Oklahoma. And the sad reality is, of the 125 legislative seats that were up for election in November of 2022, 70% of us were not on the November ballot.
Right.
A lot of that comes from allowing legislators to grab their own Sharpie and draw their own legislative district, right? So those are all safe seats.
Right.
Those people are not accountable to their constituents at all. So
True.
they sit in an ivory tower and they tell people, we're in charge. This is what you will do. We believe in choice, but only these choices,
Right.
right? If you can choose from one of the approved choices, then you're good. And if you do something that's not on the approved list, well, by golly, you're not an American. You're not
Right.
a patriot. Yeah. So I believe it stems from that reality that most of us aren't up for election in November.
Right. Right. Yeah. One of the legislators that you were talking about with the Hispanics, and I won't mention his name. I've got it right here in front of me, but I still won't mention his name.
He doesn't need the oxygen.
No, he doesn't. You're exactly right. But he's one of those people. He did not have to go against anybody. He just put his name on the list, and by acclamation, he became the representative.
Yep. I'm one of those people too. I was the only person in my district that decided who was going to represent us.
Right.
So it happens on both sides now. But the even more pernicious issue is those cases where a race is settled in the primary.
Yeah.
Because primaries are controlled by the extremists.
Yes. Yeah.
You want to know why your member is doing such extreme things? When you think they're a normal, moderate person, when you talk to them in person, it's because they're afraid of the extremists in their own party.
Right. Right.
So we got to
So
fix that.
yeah. Yeah.
But Eddie, isn't that? I mean, you're exactly right. That is where we are. How do we? And this is a huge question, and I don't expect you to give us a definitive answer tonight. But how do we get past the place where so few people can rule on behalf of all of us? They're afraid of their election consequences coming up. Um, with honestly, I think I can say this unilaterally without any regard for the people that they are supposed to be serving.
So, I mean, there's all kinds of answers to that. I am a believer in David Pepper's Saving Democracy process.
Exactly. Yes.
And trying to make sure that we are not just running candidates in all these races, but we are supporting candidates. And I realize, especially, with us as Democrats, folks don't have money, but you have the opportunity to help a candidate. You can knock doors or you can drive them around. I never realized when I was first running how much time it saves just to have somebody driving me to the next house.
Mm-hmm.
I can hit 3 times as many houses in an afternoon if I have somebody who's driving me. And so find ways to help a candidate. If you're one of those folks who wants to run for office, please put your name on the ballot, reach out to me. I would love to help you as a candidate, love to coach you on some of the issues. We have the House Democratic Campaign Committee, which is helping all Democratic candidates running for the Oklahoma House reduce the cost of running. So we're raising money so that we can sell at cost things like campaign flyers, texting plans, so that you can spend your time talking to prospective constituents, prospective voters, and not spend all of your time raising money. So, that's a significant piece of it. I have tried to address the issue of elections a couple of different ways. I ran a bill a couple of years ago that would have advanced the top 2 vote getters in a closed primary to the November election so that everybody had a chance to select. I ran a bill that said if your party chooses to close the primary, then it's no longer a people process. It's a party process, and the party ought to pay for it, and they can't have the election on the same day as a state election. By the way, for those people who want more voter participation, I have an easy answer for you. Hold an election on Saturday.
Exactly.
They just did it in North Carolina. I mean,
Yes,
we aren't,
you did.
yeah, we aren't any, frankly, I think we're smarter than North Carolinians, in spite of who we elect. And surely we could do it on a Saturday. Right now, we do it on Tuesdays. So, you have bankers hours or something. Guess who shows up? Bankers.
Right. Yeah. And that goes a long ways towards who are we pandering to in our legislature right now? It's not to the lowest denominator or the most populace of people. It's to that 1% group. And those are the ones who are the most vocal, who have the most control and the most money. So I want to talk about
government is of, by, and for the people. That's Abraham Lincoln, right?
Yes.
And so we need to make sure that people, real people, are showing up and not just the donor class.
So I want to talk just a little bit. We got a little bit of time left. We've got, my favorite kicking post is Ryan Walters. And so I thought maybe we'd get your take on some of the most recent stuff that he's pushing for. He's still in search of porn in schools. He hasn't found it yet, but he's still in search. Now his favorite thing that was picked up by the MSNBC and NBC was the drag queens, and it seems that that's something that he can't have. When in fact, when you look at what he's talking about doing, he's going to ban all theater where a girl has to play a boy or a boy has to play a girl, as well as athletics where we have these these mock football games.
Pep rally.
A pep rally where they cross dress all the time, and we're going to eliminate all of that. So I just wanted to get some of your hot takes on that. And then the next thing I want to talk about is swaddlies. That's another kicking post that we just like to kick around every once in a while.
I scratch my head over the Jesus that Ryan Walters believes in, who seems to be like a vampire, that if he's not somehow invited into a school and expressly placed up on the wall, that he can't be there.
Yeah.
As a person of faith myself, that's not biblical. It's goofy, but
Right.
It's not biblical. Regarding the issue of drag queens in schools, this is specifically talking about the principal in Western Heights. We'll just say it out loud. And you know what? I don't care what you do in your own time as an adult. I don't care what choices you're making, as long as you're not hurting other people.
Right.
I didn't come to school as a drag queen. Frankly, I don't know that I really have a problem with that either. The whole notion that drag queen reading hour is somehow detrimental to kids. They're kids. They're not looking at this going, oh my gosh, I need to grow up and cross dress or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Yeah. But in that specific case, you had a person who was doing something on their own time as an adult, not crossing over into their work at all, who got unfairly targeted by somebody who's trying to make a name for himself on the national front.
Right.
And his obsession with porn does not extend to even tracking whether or not they're finding it at all.
Right.
And that came out in a news article a couple weeks ago when the television station reached out for specific occurrences. They haven't been tracking them.
Right.
It has nothing to do with really, if there's a problem, it's all about trying to build this image in the eyes of people who no longer have kids in schools, so they will stop supporting public education.
And I find it so interesting that when you do a little research on Ryan Walters, he went to Harding University over in Searcy, Arkansas, and you look at the news about Harding University, and just in 2020, they had a petition in order to get 11,000 signatures to get the auditorium, who was named after a George S. Benson auditorium, which was one of the most illustrious white supremacists in Arkansas. And and yet he's bringing that talks about indoctrination to me. That tells me all that I need to know when he's talking about indoctrination, about what he received as far as indoctrination whenever he was going through university and going to this private university that preached and showcased white supremacy. So then of course we got to talk a little bit about the other topic is the swaddlies. Oh, wait a minute. I got one more thing about Ryan Walters. I just saw the petition, or not a petition, but an article come out where he's telling people now that he has a questionnaire. Have you talked or negatively posted anything about Governor Stitt? Have you negatively posted anything about Department of Education? I just saw that little survey come out earlier today, and I haven't had a chance to really find out more about it. But to me, that should be, it seems like he's borderline on violating privacy.
So lots to unpack with all of that. Let's start with the basics. That Ryan Walters is perfectly comfortable with indoctrination.
Sure.
He calls it PragerU. I call it indoctrinainment.
Right.
The only thing he's concerned about is he wants the indoctrination to be his indoctrination.
Right.
When we shouldn't have it at all.
At all. Exactly right.
Yeah. So, and ask me the rest of that again.
Oh, about the survey that is being put around to the teachers and faculty about, their First Amendment right, where they have to declare whether or not they have posted anything negatively about the superintendent or the governor, or, it's like a 4-question questionnaire, but it's a disqualifying questionnaire, again, violating the person's First Amendment rights.
Yeah, so there is a piece that I have been made aware of, and I don't know whether it's factual or not.
True,
That's a
true.
good
That's what I
question.
don't know about.
But apparently related to the Teacher of the Year process.
Okay.
And so historically, Teacher of the Year for the state of Oklahoma was selected from the various district selected Teachers of the Year.
Okay.
And Ryan Walters changed that process this year to allow anybody apparently to be nominated. And as part of that process, the narrowing down the list, some people are saying includes this very offensive litmus test as to whether or not you support Dear Leader.
Right.
That's what they did in Nazi Germany. That's what they do in communist China.
Exactly.
Where you have to support Fearless Leader, otherwise you're out.
Right. Right.
You're an apostate. And so if that's true, it's yet another example of just how disgusting he's made that office.
Right.
So
right.
I hope it's not the case. And I've been focused so much on legislative stuff the past 2 weeks, but that was brought to my attention. So,
yeah, it's very, very disturbing. Some of the stuff that he does. I think he just does it just to be disturbing, just to get the headline. It doesn't matter where there's no follow up on it. The fact that he's losing money for education in the state of Oklahoma is probably the biggest travesty that would concern most people. And I think most people are just going to let things go the way they are going right now until it starts affecting them personally, where they're not going to be able to allow their kids to go to a public school, or it starts affecting the public school's income, where they can't have football or basketball because there's no money left over for those extracurricular activities. And I think that's a few years down the road, but you can see the damage, the writing on the wall that's going to start happening.
Yeah.
So, well, I think unless Scott has some additional questions or things that he wants to talk about, we've kind of went all over the place with you, and I've enjoyed this time with you. Go ahead.
And I have too. And I just want to, no questions, but I just want people to know that if we had another dozen Andy Fugates in our legislature, life would be so much better in Oklahoma.
Exactly.
He mentioned a little while ago, if you're thinking about running for office, reach out here, or call me. I have seen this man give out his personal cell phone number, not his office number, but his personal cell phone number, all the way down to Durant, which is like 14 feet from Texas.
Right.
And that is not a part of his district. And yet Andy continues to fight for all Oklahomans. And Representative Fugate, I'm a huge fan of yours, but I swear we are better as a state because you are in the legislature, and I admire you so much. And this conversation this evening has been not only enlightening, but it's been very comforting, I'll say, for me, because you are a champ of the people. And God, if we could only have a Governor Fugate one day, that would make me really happy.
It would make me sad, Scott. My wife has assured me if I have any plans for any higher office, I can do it as a single guy. And
no.
I know. But just know that you have a heck of a lot of support from people who admire you, because you are one of the most down to earth people I've ever met, and you give so much of yourself, and I am grateful to be in your orbit.
well, thank you.
Absolutely.
I will tell you, the Senate seat that is part of my district is Senator Kay Floyd's seat. Leader Floyd is terming out, and I had folks encourage me to consider a run for that seat. I told them I'm perfectly happy where I am. I represent the 40,000 people that I got a chance to grow up with. I see every day in the grocery store and at church and at restaurants. And I have enough schools to go to every day of the week as it is. I don't need another 25 schools.
You sure don't. You sure don't.
Yeah.
But just know, please, that your work is not unnoticed and it's not unappreciated, because so many people, when Kevin told me that you were our guest tonight, I was so happy, because you and I have had some wonderful conversations over the last several years. And I just want to say thank you for all that you do, not for Democrats, but for all Oklahomans.
That's right. I believe we win, not just as Democrats, but I believe we win when the people of Oklahoma win. And when we're spending all of our time saying my party won, your party won, then we're all losing.
Right.
Together we can build a better Oklahoma.
Absolutely.
I firmly believe that.
Well, we are coming up on the close of our session tonight, and it's been an honor and a privilege to have you on Coffee with Democrats. We've had such an engaging conversation with you, and something that I'm going to cherish for a long, long time, and greatly appreciate everything that you've done, your contribution. Thanks for coming on Coffee with Democrats. And is there any other parting shots before we go? Anything you want to just bring up?
I would like to mention something I mentioned earlier, and that is my Sunday night live stream.
Yes.
8 p.m. while the legislature's in session. Come find me on Facebook. If you're interested in, short videos, look me up on TikTok.
TikTok, that's exactly
right. I did one
right.
today I try to help people understand what we do, and today's was about the process for striking title. We do it a lot, and people don't exactly know why, so I talked about why. And of course, I'm on Twitter. I'm long enough on Twitter that my handle is A Fugate.
Right.
So, which I'm kind of proud of. It was my handle long before I had any political aspirations. So come find me.
So thank
Kevin,
you so
thanks for
much
having
again.
me.
Thank you again. It's a great honor and privilege, and we look forward to having more conversations with you in the future. So again, we're going to encourage everybody to go over onto your Facebook account and look you up on the Sunday evening show. Again, thanks everybody for joining us on Coffee with Democrats. It's been a great conversation. And until the next time, everyone, please be safe.